Hi, sir. Is it audible? inspired by the desire for social change through their business models. Today, for this program, with us we have Mr. Arun Nagpal, co-founder and managing director of Mrida Group. An engineer and MBA in marketing and finance, Mr. Arun Nagpal has over 30 years of diverse business experience, covering a range of industries and functional areas in progressively senior roles, including over 10 years at the CEO board levels. Always passionate about social issues, he turned social entrepreneur in 2014, co-founding Mrida, which means soil in Sanskrit, a social business venture aimed at facilitating sustainable and scalable holistic rural development and uplifting lives of underserved individuals and communities at the bottom of the pyramid. Mrida's interventions in remote rural areas include energy access, education, health and nutrition, skill development, livelihoods, women empowerment, and agriculture. Mrida has partnered with leading corporates like Mahindra and Mahindra, Rio Tinto, Island FS, Hero Motors, Reliance Foundation, etc. Since its conception, Mrida has initiated interventions in 42 villages across 9 Indian states, impacting over 22,000 lives. Mr. Arun Nagpal and the team are now aggressively attempting to scale up in India and overseas as well. I welcome Mr. Arun Nagpal for this webinar. Welcome, sir. Once again, I welcome you all for this webinar. Now, I invite Mr. Arun Nagpal for his presentation. Please, sir. Please.
Thank you, Professor Krishna Kumar, and good afternoon to the panelists and everyone who's attending this seminar today. I must thank you for the opportunity to, speak with distinguished panelist set as well as audience. And, let me just start the screen sharing. Yeah, is this visible? Yeah. Okay. So what I'm going to talk to you over the next half an hour, 45 minutes is what I call as forward into the future. I think that is something which is very important in today's context. Particularly, we've got to keep looking at how do we move into the future despite all the uncertainties that surround us. And these are my reflections as a social entrepreneur, a journey which I embarked upon about 10 years ago. And I won't really say that this is a lecture, but I would say it's about sharing my experiences as a social entrepreneur. And again, it's not just about sharing experiences, but it's also about learning from sharing. Learning is something that never ends. And for me, the biggest opportunity of an occasion like this is not only to be able to share what I've gone through, but to interact with all of you and to understand and learn something from your experiences and your feedback as well. So one of the things that I would really suggest is at the end of this session, if we can have some amount of interaction, question answer sessions, which I'll be happy to respond, right? So that's the sequence that we would follow. Very often people have asked me saying that, look, what is it that prompted you to quit at the peak of your corporate career and get into something like social entrepreneurship or rural development? So while, that's another story in itself, but I just like to share with you, this picture, which I really say is something that triggered off, my advent into the social entrepreneurship space. Now, this is a village that I visited in Rajasthan about 8 years ago, peak of summer, probably 45, 46 degrees centigrade. And as we entered this village and we went into one of these houses, so in the courtyard, I came across this little girl, must have been about 3 or 4 years old, not a stitch of cloth that she was wearing on her. And if you would notice this hammock over there, she has a little sibling which is in that hammock, and she's kind of swinging that sibling. Her parents had brought her to the fields to earn their daily living. And, just beside, which is not visible in this picture, was a glass of water. And that was all that this little girl and her siblings had. And that was something that really made a deep impact on me. And the question really came to my mind, can we do something to support these kind of people? Can we do something to uplift people like these? There are not only thousands, but hundreds of thousands, millions of people like this in India and other parts of the world. So I would say that this is something that I'd like to share with you about an experience that triggered my advent into the social entrepreneurship space. Right. Moving on, let me share a picture. I don't know if you'll be able to recognize what exactly this is, but this is actually a real life picture of an intervention that we've undertaken in one of the villages. This is a village in UP. And while it may be difficult for you to understand what this picture is, I think this is something that will give you another perspective. So they're essentially the same picture, but so this lady was there in the earlier picture as well, but the difference is a 2-watt LED bulb that got switched on. And that is the kind of impact that this 2-watt LED bulb made on the life of this lady. She probably lives in this village, does not have access to electricity, and that's what her life is all about. And when we switch on a 2-watt LED bulb, this is the kind of difference that it, literally as well as figuratively, taking her from darkness into light. So I call this slide what a few watts can do, because as I mentioned, this is a 2-watt LED bulb which makes this difference. And that's 2-watt LED bulb transforms a rural life in India from what you see on the top to what you see below. That's quite a stark kind of image, and it's something that creates an impression. And this is what leads me to a new paradigm that I'd like to talk to you about. Everyone talks about think big. What I'd like to share with you is think small. Why can't we look at thinking small, not necessarily thinking big? And since we're talking about small, well, there is a certain amount of small print involved here. So we say that think small would be a transformer. So like a transformer takes a small voltage and amplifies it into something much bigger. Thinking small necessarily does not mean that you are literally thinking small. You can actually have small interventions that can have a transformative impact. As you would see, small can be powerful. You have ants who carry much more than their own body weight. The ripple effect of a small drop in a pond or in a river can actually spread very, very far depending on how this drop falls, right? So small can be something which is very, very powerful. Right now, how do you convert the power of the small to a transformative impact? And that is what we call as the holistic approach. So if you combine a holistic approach with the power of the small, that is what leads to the transformation. So now let me give you a real life example. So, I give you this example of this village near Bareilly in Uttar Pradesh, where we had this village which was just about 150 meters from the national highway, but it did not have electricity, right? So mind you, so no electricity at all. And in the evening, the entire village would shut down because they had nothing to do, right? What we did there was we tied up with a corporate for a corporate social responsibility funding, and we provided solar microgrids, very small 250-watt solar microgrids to provide basic energy access to people in this village. And it was 5 watts. So we had 2 bulbs of 2 watts each and a mobile charging point per household, which we supplied to about 45 households in this village. Now that brings me to another very powerful thing that we say. One of the things that we've really learned along this journey is nothing should be given free. The moment you give something free, it loses its value. So what we told these villagers is saying that, look, when we are providing you with energy access, when we are providing you with solar electricity, you were spending money on kerosene, you were spending money on charging your mobile phones. So since you're going to save that money, you've got to pay something for the service that we provide you. So, but then we said that, look, this money is not going to come to Mrida, this money is not going to come to anyone else, it will remain within the village. We'll set up a bank account called the Village Development Fund, and all this money will go into the Village Development Fund. It will be used within your village community. So they said, fine, how much? So we said, again, we are not going to tell you what we're going to charge. Why don't we set up a committee within the village? So we selected a few men, 2 women and 2 youth from the village, which we called, the Village Development Committee. Now that's the leadership team in the village where we foster leadership within the community. So the Village Development Committee decided that they would charge 150 rupees per month per household for this energy access. So now we have about 45 households paying 150 rupees per month each. So roughly assuming that everyone does not pay, we have about 6,000 rupees going into the Village Development Fund, which is a bank account opened there. Now, how do we take the holistic approach one step further? So now we told them saying that, look, you have electricity now. The entire village would shut down, post dark. Now that you have electricity, why don't you do something with that electricity? Get your children to study, get your women to do something in terms of livelihoods, etc. Do something with that electricity. So what would you like to do? So the Village Development Committee and the villagers came up with this idea saying, why don't you teach the women in our village how to stitch? So we said, fine, let's do that. So we got some more CSR funds. We picked up some money from the Village Development Fund, which was the money which came from the villagers themselves. And we started teaching women in that village how to stitch. I'll go into that a little more in detail later. But then the idea was that you use the energy access, create a village development fund, have a leadership team within that village, and use that fund in order to facilitate training and skill development in that village, which in this case was teaching women how to stitch. Now, once you've developed skills, you've got to take the next step forward. You've got to tell people how to utilize these skills. We've got to encourage people who become skilled to become entrepreneurs. So that's the next step in the holistic approach. So once you've taught people how to stitch, can we encourage some of them to become entrepreneurs? Now, once they become entrepreneurs, they're developing a product or a service. The next step is that how can we help them with market linkages? So we support these entrepreneurs in the village with market linkages. And once you do all that, that is when you showcase transformation. So that's the holistic approach and the power of the small. Now, how does this happen in actual practice? So let's give you real life pictures from these villages. So the first time when my team and I visited this village, these ladies in the village, they've got this ghungat or the veil. So they would not like to interact directly with you. And in addition to that, they would make sure that they had a male member in the family who was present there. That's the only way you can get access to women in that village. Now, what did we do next? We got into that village, which was unelectrified. We provided a solar microgrid to replace the kerosene lamp with the LED bulb. This is an amazing experience, even as I recall it, probably 5 years down the line. So we went out into the market, picked up these mats, brought some of these mats, put them under a tree, bought 3 sewing machines, got a hold of a local NGO and a lady who know how to stitch. And we started stitching classes in this village. Again, mind you, with the money that came from the villagers themselves. So that's how the stitching center in this village started about 4.5, 5 years ago. Now, to cut a long story short, over the last 5 years in this village and in about 2 or 3 other villages nearby, we've taught about 150 women how to stitch. Now, these people have the skill set. So whether they stay in that village, they go out, they get married, they carry this basic skill set with them. The next step was, and this is again an amazing experience when we work at the bottom of the pyramid, you'll find people who come up who have that passion, who have that hunger, who have the desire to do something more. So we had a number of girls who came and said that, look, we'd like to do an advanced stitching program. So we helped them, we facilitated that. And then out of them, some of them came back and said, look, can we start our own stitching center? And that's what, you see in this picture. This was something called the Raj Lakshmi Stitching Center. So, we had this transformation from teaching stitching under a tree to a small little stitching center that was set up in this village near Bareilly. Now, the next step, as I said, you've got to be able to provide them with market linkages. So while these women started doing stitching for their own village, blouses, petticoats, bags, salwar kameez, etc., we helped them to get access to markets in urban areas. We helped them to stitch bags. We helped them to stitch palazzos, which incidentally even got exported to university campuses in the US. We got them to stitch baby suits, which got exported to some individuals in France. So, that's the kind of transformation. And that is what I call as think small and think holistic. So you start with, going into a village, you start with providing energy access, and then you adopt the holistic approach. Small little interventions, as I said, 150 rupees a month, right? 2 watts of LED bulb, 5 watts per household. Start with teaching women under a tree how to stitch, make them entrepreneurs, provide them with market linkages, and showcase transformation, right? So this is how we start. This was the first image of women in that village. And we go through that stage where these women today do not hesitate to get onto Skype and make a call to us. So the veils have gone off, technology has been adopted, and these women reach out to us through Skype. And this is what I call as the power of small and the power to transform. Now, mind you, these may be small little things for us, 150 rupees, they earn maybe 4,000 rupees a month due to their initiative. But mind you, you are in an area where the entire household income of this family is maybe 4,000 rupees. So you're actually creating a transformative impact in the lives of people, right? Now, this is not only related to women. Now, since we work in rural areas, since a large part of the Indian population is basically small and marginal farmers, they depend on agriculture. How can we, transform small and marginal farmers, uplift their lives by incorporating the power of the small and the whole, right? So let's look at a few examples. Millets and amaranth. I mean, in the south, millets and amaranth, ragi, jawar, bajra, etc., are grains which are commonly known. They are healthy grains, right? But which have generally been forgotten. But if you look at millets and amaranth and farmers who source these millets and amaranth, right? When you sell them as commodities, they sell between 25 rupees per kilo and 60 rupees a kilo. Now, the same millet and amaranth grain, if you convert it into a flour, the flours sell for between 200 to 200, 350 rupees per kilo. If you convert the flour further, move up the value chain into cookies, those cookies sell for up to 2,000 rupees per kilo. So see the range from 20 to 60, and then from 200 to 350, and then all the way up to 2,000 rupees. Let's take another example. Raw turmeric also, grows quite widely in Kerala. Now, when you take out raw turmeric from the soil, the farmers get somewhere between 25 rupees per kilo. Just the simple act of boiling and drying the turmeric, the price goes up to 150 rupees a kilo. Now, you lose some water, so the 25 actually becomes 75 or 80 rupees. But by just doing the simple act, small initiative of boiling and drying, you're able to increase the value of that turmeric by as much as 80 to 100%. And this will come as an even bigger surprise as a finished product. The organic and ground turmeric sells in the US and Whole Foods and other outlets at as much as 150 to $200 per kilogram. So that's 8,000 rupees per kilogram. So that's the power of value addition from 25 rupees per kilo to 8,000 rupees a kilo. So that's the kind of impact that can have. So what are we trying to do? So what we've tried to do is, Mrida is Sanskrit for soil. So we've created this product range called Earthspired, inspired by the earth, through which our objective is to move up the value chain from grain to flour. So we've created a range of healthy multigrain millet and amaranth based flours. So we're moving consistently up the value chain, moving further up the value chain from flours to cookies. So we've got a range of 6 different attractive flavors, good packaging, etc., gluten-free cookies, in different varieties, right? So what are we trying to do in this process? Because we've moved up the value chain, we're able to provide farmers with better than market value for their produce. We not only work with farmers, but we work with the women in that village so that they can get further value by doing simple things like grading of the flour or converting the grain into flour. So they themselves are moving up the value chain, right? We get the village folk to get involved in value and create further value by processing and packaging. In fact, the flours are, processed into finished products through an NGO partner that we have in Delhi, which basically works with women from urban slums. So not only are we impacting the farmer and the women in the villages, but you're also creating positive impact for women from urban slums in places like Delhi. Customers get a health benefit because all these products that we have are healthy products and they're nutritionally designed and formulated. So customers get a health benefit while contributing to an environmental or social cause, because they contribute to a social cause because by buying any of these products, you're supporting small and marginal farmers and people in rural areas. Environment, the water footprint of crops like millets and amaranth is significantly lower than for rice and wheat. And I'm going to tell you something which shocked me when I heard about it, and I'm sure it'll come as a real surprise to you. Do you know a 100-gram pack of cookies? Do you know the water footprint of a 100-gram pack of cookies? It could range anywhere between 400 liters to 1,000 liters plus. So can you imagine a 100-gram pack of cookie actually consumes 1,000 liters plus of water? Now, if we are able to design products which significantly reduce the water footprint, not only are you giving a tasty and a healthy product, but you're doing something which is helping you to conserve the environment. And then, of course, Mrida has the opportunity to run a business in the process. So what are we trying to do in this? We're trying to create a true win-win for all. So value addition at every level in the value chain. So that's something that Earthspire is all about. Now, how do we integrate all this into the Mrida business development framework, which is what we call as the holistic development framework? What we try and do is we create this concept of the empowered village, which could be literally an empowered village, which could be a Mrida powered village. And the village is all about sustainable and scalable holistic rural development. How do we facilitate this rural development? If there is a village which does not have electricity, we get into it from an energy access point of view, setting up the solar microgrids. If that village is largely dependent of agriculture, we start working with small and marginal farmers and impact their activities. When we move into a village, I spoke to you about the village development committee. So we try and foster leadership development so that we are able to train them as we go along, so that 3 years later, when we move out of the village, this leadership development team, leadership team is willing to take on the reins from there. How do we do this? We do this in an environment where we foster partner as well as stakeholder engagement. So we could be getting a corporate who provides a CSR intervention. We could be tying up with an NGO who provides training for stitching, or we tie up with partners in different parts of the country. And by doing this, our objective is to impact life in different aspects within that village, whether it's education, whether it's skill development, whether it's hygiene, whether it's entrepreneurship. So that's the holistic development framework that we commonly talk about. So now, where does Mrida fit into all this? So Mrida, as Professor Krishna Kumar pointed out, Mrida is Sanskrit for soil. So it's a social enterprise. It's a social business venture, which we say very proudly is inspired by the soil. As they say, we come from the soil, we ultimately go back to it. So Mrida as a business is inspired by the soil. Mrida was founded in the year 2014 by individuals with proven corporate experience. So we had two of my colleagues, friends and ex-colleagues from about 20 years ago. Myself, I had about 30 years in the corporate world. So we came together, to co-found Mrida in the year 2014. What is Mrida all about? Mrida is all about bringing the same rigor and the financial discipline of the corporate world into the development sector. Something that we feel very, very strongly about is development need not necessarily be just donation or philanthropy or grant or freebies. In fact, it should be far from that. Why can we not bring in the same rigor and the financial discipline of the business world into the development sector? And that is what we're trying to do through Mrida. Mrida, as I pointed out earlier, is all about sustainable and scalable models for holistic development. Now, in the development sector, our experience has been that there are two things why development does not really happen. Sometimes development is not sustainable. You start a certain intervention, but the moment you move out from there, there is nobody to take that intervention forward. So it has to be sustainable, right? It has to be scalable. I mean, we are very proud to say that we work in 42 villages, 20,000 people impacted. But in a situation where you have 200 million people who need to be impacted, 20,000 is no doubt very good. But it has to be much, much more than that. So we've got to see whether we can horizontally deploy models that we are working on from 40 villages to 4,000 to 40,000 villages to 400,000 villages. Can we actually try and bring in more people into this framework, etc.? We work on agriculture, skilling, livelihood, basically the holistic development piece. And as we said, while we can try and scale up our interventions, the magnitude of the issue facing us is so large that unless and until we really create a movement, we're not really going to have significant and scalable impact. So if someone asks us what business are we in, I would say that we are in the business of development. right? So how does Mrida work? So we've got a division called Mrida Energy, which is related to renewable energy and where we work in all aspects of village life, whether it's agriculture, whether it's livelihoods, whether it's women's empowerment, whether it's entrepreneurship. We have another entity called Mrida Greens, where we've got this processing facility in Umbergaon in Gujarat, where this is an ISO and a good manufacturing certified facility where we make extracts of plants and herbs. So say, for instance, today, if you were to buy an aloe vera capsule from somewhere, the extract that goes into that aloe vera capsule is something that Mrida Greens makes and supplies to these B2B customers. So just as we had the Mrida Earthspired, here, what we do is we provide sustainably sourced herbal extracts to B2B customers. We are able to run a business for ourselves in the process. And the whole objective of this business is to support tribal people, small and marginal farmers, and people at the bottom of the pyramid in rural India. I've already spoken to you about Mrida Earthspired. You're aware of that. So this is how the Mrida Group is structured. We have a foundation called the Mrida Heart and Soil Foundation, where we access CSR funding and philanthropic grants from individuals and corporates. We deploy these grants or philanthropic initiatives to start things like solar microgrids, skill development, promotion of entrepreneurship, etc. And once we're able to develop entrepreneurs, so look at it as seed capital, which promotes entrepreneurship. And then in order to provide the market linkages to these entrepreneurs to be able to help them to scale up and grow, we've got the Mrida Greens and Development Private Limited, which is the business development arm of us as a social enterprise, where we've got the B2C, which is the Mrida Earthspired, we've got the B2B, which is the herbal extracts through Mrida Greens, and we've got the entire Mrida development piece. So that's what the Mrida Group looks all about. Our story so far, in terms of the presence, as again was pointed out, we're very delighted to say that we're today present in 42 villages, 9 states, in the west, in the center, in the north, and in the extreme northeast. We work in some of the remotest villages in Manipur. We've impacted more than 20,000 lives at the bottom of the pyramid through our work. We also quantify the impact that we create. So we see that more than 70 tons of carbon dioxide emission have been reduced through the kind of energy saving activities that we've been able to foster in these villages. We started with 3. We are today 42 of what we call as empowered team members, and we're growing. We've made our initial inroads into export markets. We supply herbal extracts to South Korea, we supply them to Malaysia, and we're looking at other countries where we can supply these products as well. We recently supplied from Earthspired products to Bhutan, and that's how we're moving forward. Our head office is based in Delhi. We have one of our co-founders based in Mumbai, our unit based in Gujarat. And since we're essentially in operation working in remote parts of the country, we've got people based in remote villages called, for instance, in Eastern UP, in Bokaro, in Jharkhand, and, in other parts, in a place called Bakswaha in MP, etc. So that's the kind of structure that we have. What we consider as our biggest assets, of course, the first and foremost is what we call as our empowered team members, 42 and growing as of today. We're proud to have developed very strong relationships, whether with corporates for our CSR interventions, with large B2B customers. We sell our products through Amazon, Big Basket, and other online, media. We're very proud of the kind of association we have with a range of educational institutions, including, I'm very happy to start this as a first step with you all, but we work with IIM Lucknow, we work with the University of Virginia in the United States, with the University of Debrecen in Hungary, with INSEAD in France, and with the BML Majal University. And, we've been talking about our work to even agencies like ICRISAT, the World Bank, and the International Finance Corporation. Both Mrida as well as Earthspired are assets in the form that they've been, registered as trademarks owned by the Mrida Group. What has been our vision? So this is what we actually set out to do. What was our vision in the year 2020, and what are we looking at moving beyond? As I said, we started in the year 2014. In 15-16, it was the first full year of operation. We'd worked in 5 villages, made a very, very small impact of 200 lives. Our top line was 20 lakhs, 0.2 crores, and obviously we had losses. Now this is a completely new paradigm. So, for instance, one of the organizations where I used to head earlier, was a 1,000 crore organization with 3,000 people. And I remember that if in any month we did less than 50 crores or 60 crores of turnover, I would call in the entire team and saying, hey, we're not going to be able to run a business if we're going to do only 60 crores a month. And here was a situation where the entire team celebrated 20 lakhs at the end of the year. So that's the kind of different paradigm. But then we moved on from there. In the year 2017-18 was the first year that we broke even. We had a cash break even, so we could say that the initiatives that we were undertaking were sustainable financially. That's what we talk as the business development. We then grew. We doubled our turnover to 11 crores in the year 2018-19. We obviously made profits. And then, of course, 1920, we were hit by the pandemic in the last quarter. We actually dipped a bit in terms of our top line, and we just about broke even again. So, we went up and then we came down. And what are we looking at in the year 2021? So we're saying pandemic or no pandemic, I think we want to increase the number of villages that we're going to impact. Our objective is that in this year, when the requirement is much more in rural areas, we will increase our scale of impact by at least 10,000 to 30,000 plus. We are looking aggressively at targeting at least an 80% growth in our top line, and obviously we'd like to be making profits as well so that we can actually plow back the profits into the social enterprise. So quickly to summarize, founded in 2014 as a self-funded business venture. Till the year 2017, we were actually trying to showcase proof of concept that business of development is something that is possible, and also demonstrate a clear path towards sustainability as well as scalability, which is why we decided to spread our efforts across 9 states in India. As I mentioned, in the year 17-18, we made cash profits as a group, which was a big landmark for us. In the year 2018-19, we had, you all have studied in your MBA program, so we had one cash cow, which was the B2B business. We had one business, which was what we call as the investment business, which is earth-fired, where you need to make significant, investments in order to be able to build your brand equity. So that was the investment business. 1920 was, of course, the COVID impact during Q4 when we came down. And 2021 is what we say is not a year where we're going to be cowed down by COVID. We're going to say that this is the year of new paradigms, new opportunities. In fact, we're now seeking growth funding in Mrida so that we can scale up both the initiatives as well as the impact to the next years. Sorry, there seems to be some issue with the, yeah, okay. So now, I've tried to share with you over the last 20, 25 minutes or so, something about our journey so far. Now, one thing that I really enjoy sharing with them about, in addition to journey, is something that I consider as food for thought. Some sayings, some thoughts which have been very thought-provoking, something which has left a deep impact. And I think this is very, very relevant, particularly in today's pandemic situation. Which is you cannot control what happens to you. You really don't have control over what happens to you, but you do have full control over how you can respond to a situation that you are faced with. And this is completely, I can promise you, you do have full control over how you can respond. And in your response lies your power. And believe me, that power does exist in each and every one of us, whether it's somebody at the bottom of the pyramid, whether it's you, whether it's me, whether it's anyone that we talk about, that power lies within us, right? Then, of course, this is very profound. You can either master change, right? Or you can allow change to master you. It's up to us what is the mindset that we want to follow. You can master change, or you can allow change to master you, right? So what are we doing in Mrida? I spoke to you about these, the stitching initiative that we started in these villages. So these are a few pictures of, these are recently taken pictures of, we started off with one, stitching center. We have something now which started as a women's self-help group initiative, which is called the Aparajita Vikas Samu, which is again near Bareilly. So you have these, group of women who get together, come in from their homes, sit down in the stitching center. We've upgraded that stitching center over a period of time. They make bags, they make these, different things for their own villages, etc. And we try and help them with market linkages. So what is one of the things that they've done during the pandemic, which is, of course, reusable cloth masks. Now, these people, and I'll share with you a little more about this later, in the thick of the pandemic, without being able to step out, without our being able to provide them with physical resources, we taught them online how to make these masks. So this entire initiative was done online, and they've been able to come up with these 3-layer reusable cloth masks as per WHO standards. And we're now trying to talk to corporates as to how these masks can be distributed. Each mask goes, with a small little tag. So for instance, you've got this lady who's Phulan Devi, who comes from a village. So she says that, look, through this initiative, thank you for purchasing the masks. Through this, you have helped me to, come up in life. So that's the kind of thing that we have. So what are the kind of other initiatives that Mrida has initiated in the new normal, right? I told you about cloth masks. So you know how we did this? So we had, the Institute of Home Economics in Delhi. They wanted their students to go through an internship program. It couldn't be done physically, but, from their textile, unit. So some of their students came on board, and through Skype and through Zoom calls, etc., they conducted these online courses, and they taught these women how to make cloth masks. So that was one intervention. We had a very interesting association with the Colloquia Business School in New York. They were going through a program on design thinking, and we connected them with one of our villages in Bokaro in Jharkhand. The idea was to give them real life problems that we are facing in these villages, challenges, etc. And they were supposed to apply the principles of design thinking on these programs. And, in the month of March, these students were supposed to come and spend a week in the village in Bokaro and actually work on these design thinking interventions. Now, of course, we had the pandemic, they could not travel, but then we said, okay, let's figure out how to do it. So, 2 colleagues of mine, myself, we traveled to this village in Bokaro. We did a video walkthrough through this, through these villages, and transmitted the files back to the students in New York. And then they gave us, questionnaires that they wanted to administer. We administered the questionnaires, converted it into audio files, sent them back to New York. And then we had this beautiful communication going on between New York and Bokaro. And the students came up with very, very interesting, solutions to the kind of challenges that people were facing. So that was what we did with Columbia Business School. BML Munjal University near Delhi, they've got this program called Sankalp, through which, they want to encourage students to get a, rural immersion, as they call it, understand real life issues in rural areas. Now, very often in the past, even if somebody said that, look, can Mrida take in interns? We said, okay, let's take in 2, let's take in 3, let's take in maximum 4. You know what we've done? Through virtually, completely online, we've taken on a group of 47 interns. The entire MBA batch is going to be working with us remotely for 6 months. So you have students sitting in, Bareilly, Varanasi, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Delhi, and then working in villages from Bareilly and UP to Bokaro and Jharkhand to Aben and Manipur on real life projects with impact objectives. So they're going to work for 6 months. They're going to engage virtually with people in the field. They're working, for instance, with this village in Aben in Manipur, one of the remotest villages in India, trying to promote, beekeeping in Aben. So they're going to actually teach people over there about beekeeping. They're going to talk to them about beekeeping boxes. They're going to conduct a crowdfunding initiative in order to provide beekeeping boxes over there. And by the end of the training program, they're going to get the first harvest of honey from villages in Aben, and they're going to find market linkages for it so that they're able to complete the entire loop from concept to completion and creation of market linkages. So, amazing kind of interventions that these people are trying. And what we're really looking forward to with INSEAD, this is in May and June, something that we've tied up with them. We're going to connect their campuses in Fontainebleau and France, Singapore, Delhi, and rural India, where they're going to go through a 2-month virtual immersion course where Mrida is a knowledge partner. And this course is called Business Strategy for Impact and Profit. So again, they're going to, from France, from Singapore, Delhi, we're going to interact with villagers in, different villages. And at the end of the program, they're going to come up with ideas about how initiatives could be taken on to the next level, right? So to sum up, coming close to the end, so what have I tried to share with you over the last half an hour, 40 minutes? So the first thing, think small, be a transformer. Think holistic. That is what really makes the difference. That is what moves from small to transformation. think impact. Business, as we said, need not necessarily be philanthropy. It can be a win-win situation where everyone gains, right? Think scale. We've got to create real impact. And if we've really got to think scale, given the magnitude of the problem, we can't do all this on our own. Mrida does not understand beekeeping and agriculture and women's empowerment and stitching, right? But what we try and do is we try and get all of that to a common platform, partner and collaborate, and build on team strengths, right? Power of passion, very, very important. The kind of thing that you're doing is not easy, right? I may have explained to you very nicely some of the things that we've done, but believe me, it doesn't come so easy. We've made blunders, we've made mistakes, we've fallen, we've learned, we've had 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. But unless and until you have the power of passion, unless you have that motivation, that commitment, you really cannot do something like this. The power of passion. And it's something that you really need to enjoy. You cannot do this as a job. You've got to be able to do this as a passion, as a commitment, as something that you're going to say that, look, I am going to make something happen. You've got to enjoy the journey. I've tried to share with you about the Mrida model and, of course, the Mrida journey so far and what our dream for the future is, right? Just a few towards the end. I'm sorry, I'm taking up a little longer than what I had planned. This is a real life picture again from a village called Bhajanwala, which is in Uttarakhand. I'd gone there. Do you know what these people are doing? They're actually laughing at me and the team that had gone into the village. If you look at them, they don't have shoes, they have torn clothes, they probably haven't had a proper meal, but they seem to be blissfully happy with everything.
Oh, wow.
We come in from outside,
Body.
we feel very amused at whatever is going on. And this is something that I think is again very profound. We learn to find happiness in what they have, right? They're happy in their own world. They're content in their own world. Whereas find what we don't have. That is the tragedy sometimes. We don't realize what we have. We learn to find happiness. Some other learnings along the way, I believe that there are no problems, right? There are only challenges. This is not a play of words, but a problem has a very negative connotation. A challenge has a positive connotation. When you hear about a problem, it's another problem. When you hear about a challenge, your first reaction is, how can I meet this challenge head on? And believe me, there is no challenge that cannot be converted into an opportunity. Who would have thought that a 2-watt LED bulb could have led to entrepreneurs shipping material to the US and to France? Who would have thought that, a 25 rupee millet grain can be converted into a 2,000 rupees per kilo cookie, right? There is no challenge that cannot be converted into an opportunity. And again, very profound, life is not about waiting for the storms to pass. Very, very relevant in today's context. Once the storm may not pass, or if it passes, there'll be another storm coming in. But life is all about learning how to dance in the rain. There are opportunities in every single situation that we can be faced with. Yeah. Some more learnings. The only limits, as always, are in the mind. I think I've tried to show that to you. You cannot discover new oceans unless you have the courage to lose sight of the shore. So when we started off on our social entrepreneurship journey, we had a broad idea of what we were looking for. We had our value systems in place. We had our vision in place. We had our mission in place. And the rest of it, we kind of enjoyed the journey. We evolved as we go along, and we're still continuing to evolve as we go along. And this is something that I'm so fond of talking about, but every time it creates an impact. If an egg is broken with outside force, when you break an egg with outside force, a life ends. When that same egg breaks with inside force, a life actually begins. When a chick pops out, a life begins. And the lesson in this story is that transformation invariably begins from within. So there's any amount of learning that I can share, any amount of experiences that I can share, but unless and until you feel, unless and until it comes from within, unless and until it comes from the heart, transformation can only happen that way. So that's another learning. Of course, just the last few slides. So if you have made mistakes, there is always another chance for you. You may make a fresh start any moment that you choose. For this thing they call failure is not the falling down, but the staying down. I'm always reminded of this, something that Sundar Pichai, mentioned. He said, when I'm really looking for somebody senior in my organization to take on a challenging role, he says, I'm not necessarily looking for somebody who has succeeded all the time. I'm actually looking for somebody who has failed, right? And because somebody who has failed and who's had the courage of conviction to accept that failure and who's had the determination and the motivation to be able to overcome that failure, that's the kind of person that I'm looking for. So this thing that they call failure is not the falling down, but the staying down, right? And then the last one, no matter what has happened to us in the past, our future is spotless, right? Because today is the first day of the rest of our lives. Very simple statement, but I think very profound. So every day I've been through situations where I feel that, look, nothing is working. I've tried everything, it doesn't work. But then, you kind of go through it. You end that day. The next day when you start, something else comes up. And if we really believe in this, that today is the first day of the rest of our lives. And I think that probably also applies to the last day of our life, because that's the first day of the rest of our life. So that's something that I wanted to share. So what next? I mean, what do we say at the end of this? All that I have to say to you is go forth, right, and write your own story. Thank you very much. That is what I had to share with you. I'm sorry again, I've taken a little longer than what I would have liked to, but that is what I essentially wanted to share. Like I said, it's not a lecture, it's sharing my experiences. And if there are any other questions that you have, I'd be happy to respond to those questions. Thank you for your patience. You're on mute, Professor. Sorry.
So, thank you very much. It is wonderful. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Yeah.
So, Riddhi would like to say hi to you too.
Hi, Arun. That was a very,
Hi, how are
very
you?
good talk. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Share it. I hope I'm going to share it with some people. Your
Sure.
talk. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Not at all. Are we still on with the session?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, so as I said, Professor Ramachandran, you taught me at IMC, so it's a real pleasure to be able to speak to you from the other side of the table.
I enjoyed it. Actually, it was good.
So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to respond to them. Otherwise, I have my email ID, which I've shared, and anyone who's interested is more than welcome to get in touch with me, and I'm happy to respond subsequently. I'm not able to hear anything. So is there...
Hi, sir. Krishna Kumar, sir. Is it audible?
Yes, now it's audible.
No.
Hello. Hello.
Hi. This is what happens occasionally.
Well, I can say I'm glad it happened at the end of the thing and not in
Yeah,
between.
that's right. That's right. That's right.
So maybe if...
At the end, their talk went very smooth.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, it's audible.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, one question was what inspired me to get into the social entrepreneurship space? Well, I can, that's actually a fairly long story, but I think in a nutshell, I would say that, I did reasonably well for myself. I did my engineering, I did my MBA, and I had a pretty good, corporate career. And I did reasonably well for myself in every respect. But if I really look back and say that, what was it that allowed me to reach to the limits of my desire and ability? I think if I'm generous, I would say 25% of it would be because of me, because of hard work, capability, determination, intelligence, etc. But I think as much as 75%, if not more, was because I was fortunate enough to have the kind of ecosystem which allowed me to do whatever. So whether it was teachers at school, whether it was my parents, whether it was bosses at work, whether it's my family, whether it was people I worked with or my bosses at work, I think all of them contributed significantly to making me what I was. Even if I was an MD or a CEO of a company, I would typically find people 5 levels below me who were probably as good as, if not better than I was. But the reason why they hadn't been able to come up because they were not fortunate enough to have had the same kind of ecosystem that I had. It's the same thing that I find in the villages. I find people with very little to look forward to, but they have that desire, they have that urge to come up, they have that passion, they have the capability. All that they need is a helping hand. So the thought process was that at least for the last 10 to 15 years of my active life, along with my colleagues, can I actually try and create the same kind of ecosystem that I was fortunate enough to have, and use that ecosystem to be able to foster, to allow people to come up to the limits of their desire and ability. And since, I feel in a lot of ways that I'm carrying forward the legacy that my, father provided to me. He was an agriculturist, and, he was very, very passionate about rural development and the fact that India can only grow if the growth happens from the villages, which is essentially Gandhiji's philosophy. So the thought process was create the same ecosystem, create it in the villages of India, create it at the bottom of the pyramid, and let's try and see how we can, through our work, how I can apply whatever one has learned in the corporate world into the development sector and facilitate holistic development at the bottom of the pyramid. Yeah, okay, okay, now I'm reading it. What were the, can I have that question once again, please? Okay, what were the government support and the challenges you faced? Well, I'm not really getting into the government support part. I think so far our focus has been how can we kind of utilize the resources that we have, establish proof of concept. We are now reaching out to the government in the form of district administration and to people in the government sector, but equally in the corporate sector, to see how we can leverage the kind of work that we've done. So say, for instance, if we've been able to develop what we consider as an empowered village, and if we can showcase that to the district collector and try and see how we can utilize his support to be able to extend that same concept to other villages in the district. As far as challenges are concerned, well, there've been multiple challenges. Sometimes it's an issue of access, it's levels and where we going. Challenges, is also how to establish your credibility in the ground with the villages. I mean, believe me, we cannot get into the development sector by just going into a village and saying that, look, we are here to help you, you need help, etc. I think they have their self-respect. They're very, very conscious about their own capabilities. So the only way to start is by saying that, look, we're coming here, we want to learn, we want to spend some time with you. You've got to spend weeks, at times even months in the villages, establishing your credibility, building the confidence level, and then building their trust factor and then starting to work. So I would say those are the kind of challenges that we've had and which we've had to overcome. why our governments fail to replicate the same model or similar system in the rural area. Now, well, I'm not really getting into, I think, anything which could be remotely political in nature, but all that I would say is that, rather than look at why they're not doing it, I think the approach that we would take is, like every day is the first day in the rest of your life. So rather than get into telling somebody, look, why haven't you done this in the past? Why don't we look at the positive approach, saying that, look, here is a model that we've created. Here is the kind of impact it has resulted in. Can you work together with us? Can we collaborate together to extend this to other areas? I think that is the approach and the philosophy that we'd like to take.
Am I audible now, sir?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So how did people react to initiatives initially? Because people from those parts of the society are always subjected to exploitation. So did they show signs of hostility? This is one question from Mr. Vishnu Vijay.
Yeah, I think very interesting and very relevant question, I would say. Partly I mentioned this earlier. So we're very clear when we get in, we don't get in with that perspective of, going there to help them. We say that, look, we want to be with you for some time. We want to understand you. We want to understand the issues that you face. And we'd like to see if we can work together with you and support you. And I think that is something which takes time. In fact, I very often say in the development sector, you don't just need, physical capital or manpower or infrastructure or financial capital. You need something called patient capital. It happens slow. So let's say, for instance, if a village hasn't been developed in the last 74 years since independence, you and I are not going to be able to change this in 1 year. It's going to take time. So you've got to have that patience. People, by and large, have reacted positively once we've gone through this approach of building trust, building credibility, spending time. But I can also share with you, we've had some experiences. So, we had this village where we spent about 2.5 years, really, I would say, slogging it out and working together with them, really putting all our heart and soul into it. At some point of time, there was a rumor that got spread in that village, how really it went about, saying that, look, because Mrida and our CSR partner is working in this village, so it's been taken off the, the radar of the district administration. So because of that, you're not going to get, your cooking gas connection, or you're not going to get subsidies, etc. Obviously, that was a completely false rumor. But once that rumor happened, I mean, trust me, after 1.5 years, we were kindly, we were made to feel that we were not welcome in this village, because they started looking at us as somebody who had actually kind of created an issue for them. But, so these are the kind of things, but, you go through these bitter experiences at times, but that's how you remember the sweet experiences that you have as well. So once this happens, you've got to kind of try and explain things to them. You've got to claw your way back, and you've got to, gradually, win their trust and faith. So that's how I would respond to that. Very interesting thing that I learned, very often we hear about this thing called adopting a village. And actually, somebody with a lot more experience than me really taught me this. He said, and I really believe that, and I would really like to share this with you. Why do we use the term adopt? You adopt somebody who in Hindi, as we say, is lachar, somebody who is helpless, somebody who has nothing to look forward to. But if we start looking at it from that perspective, I think then we're not likely to succeed on the development front. But if we say that, listen, you are individuals in your own right, you have certain challenges, and we are here to uplift you. We are not here to adopt you. We are here to work with you, uplift you, and grow together. That is the kind of subtle, it's subtle, but it's a very, very profound approach that at least, and it's a lesson that one has learned along the journey.
Sir, one more question from Alvin John. Does social entrepreneurship has the potential to break down the current idea of profit-led capitalism?
Well, I would not really, firstly, why do we have to really break down something? As I said, I may I may feel very passionately about social entrepreneurship. I mean, there are NGOs which work on a not-for-profit mode. I don't say that they're wrong. There is a capitalist model. I don't say that that model is wrong. All that I say is that these stem from deep-rooted beliefs, value systems, etc. And it does not mean that if we have a certain set of values that we abide by, somebody who has a different set of values is wrong. All that the way we look, and to me, that is what a real tolerance is all about. You try and put your point of view across, you try and convince people about your point of view, but if there is somebody else who has a different point of view, I mean, you say, okay, fine, you have your way of looking at it, I have my way of looking at it, and we don't necessarily need to break something down. We can coexist. We say that, look, you have your positives, we have our positives, let's try and see how these, both these can survive and thrive together in the same ecosystem.
So one more question from Vishnu Vijay. Why our government failed to replicate the same model or similar system in the rural areas?
Yeah, I think I responded to this question earlier. Like I said, I'm not really getting into why they have failed. I think there have been very many examples of very successful execution of this, but what is happening is that these are happening in very small pockets. So there are these what I call as pockets of excellence, where you have a district collector or a block development officer, or even a political representative or a corporate. They've done excellent work, right? So they've created what I call as pockets of excellence. I would like to feel that we've done our own bit to create these pockets of excellence, right? What we've got to see is how can we actually put all these pockets of excellence together, how we can scale it up to a different level. I think that's the approach that one would like to take. So if I've done something good, I'd like to share that with the district collector, with the corporate, with all of you as students, saying that, look, hey, this is possible, right? And if I've done it today, I've learned from somebody else, I'm passing on some of my learnings to you. Let's not look at why it hasn't happened in the past. Let's look at how we can make it better in the future.
Okay, so one more question. How to approach the organization for the social enterprise partnerships, like corporate organization, how to approach?
Well, to begin with, it's not very easy. Initially, what we did was, since again, my co-founders and I, we were fortunate enough to come from a background where we had access to resources, where we had access to a network. We could reach out to people saying that, look, this is a new initiative that we are starting. Would you like to participate? So we got our first, CSR partnership. We started working in this village near Bareilly. It worked out quite well. Other villages came and said that, look, why don't you do this work with us? Then we spoke to, other corporates saying that, look, we worked on this, would you like to work together with us? So you kind of, build it up step by step. So I think everyone, when they start, everyone will have access to some resources. You may have somebody who's known, you may want to actually start working in your own village. You may like to do, because as I said, it's think small. You don't necessarily need to have, lakhs of rupees as capital to start with. You've got to have a thought process. You've got to have that passion, commitment, motivation, and make those small little inroads. Could be in your village, could be in your town, could be related to your business school where you work, could be related to the organization that you're working, could be a network that you have. I mean, there are n number of opportunities. Start small, take it one step at a time, and build upon it as you go forward.
For MBA students like us, please give your advice how to focus on the social enterprise career or industry.
Okay. Well, firstly, I would not, I've moved on to the social entrepreneurship platform. I moved on to it pretty late in my career after I had put in about 28, 30 years in the corporate world. So I would not kind of encourage everybody to move into it. I think it is something that has to come from the heart. You need to really believe. And the very encouraging part that I find today is that, when we were growing up, I was never exposed to environment and climate change and, social aspects and sustainable sourcing. I mean, we really didn't, to be honest with you, we didn't really learn anything about this. I think this is something that has been a development of the past. I'm very encouraged to see that today's students are far more socially, environmentally aware. I mean, they're really activists in that sense, in the sense that not all of them go in, only to make money or to, work in a corporate career. There are a lot of them who are very socially inclined. I have some very bright youngsters who've come in as fresh graduates and who are actually the mainstay of our organization today, which I'm very proud of. So, what I'd like to say is, if you don't have it in your heart that you want to be in the social entrepreneurship space, there's nothing wrong in it. I mean, by all means, follow your heart. If you want to make a corporate career, make that. But if you do want to get into the social entrepreneurship space, I would say that it's a really growing area today, particularly in a pandemic kind of a situation. There'll be more and more requirement of social entrepreneurs. So if you really feel that you have it in you, make those small steps. You could either work on a kind of a holistic model, which is what we strongly believe in, or there may be a certain area where you feel you have core competence. You come from a farming background, there's a lot of agriculture happening in your family. You may understand agriculture, focus on agriculture. I mean, you may be coming in an area, let's say, where women's empowerment has been something that you've really grown under. I mean, you've had somebody who's been an activist in that area, focus on women's empowerment. I think you come up from a background where, let's say, your parents or people close to you have been in the education field. Start from the educational field. So first and foremost, make a conscious decision. Is this something that you really want to do from the bottom of your heart? If you do, go ahead. Look at either a holistic approach, or if you really want to focus on a particular area, look at the particular area where you think you have strengths or core competencies. And then, of course, these days you have a lot of these courses. You have the best universities run courses on social entrepreneurship. You have, you have a lot of these CSR related initiatives that are going on. Attend some of these and build your network, build your thought process bit by bit. And at some point of time, take that leap of faith and get into it.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Due to time constraint, now we'll move to the vote of thanks session. Okay.
Thank you. And in case there are any queries, I mean, I'm happy to respond to them through email subsequently.
Sure, sir, I'll do that. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Respected dignitaries, dear faculty members, students, alumnus, and delegates from industry. I'm happy to deliver a vote of thanks for this webinar program organized by DCS Math Institutions. First of all, I thank our Chief Facilitator, Mr. Ravi DC, for giving us opportunity to conduct this Colloquia webinar series. I thank our Group Director, Brigadier Sri Ashok Kumar, for extending enough support for this program. I thank our Dean, Professor N. Ramachandran, for giving the concept of organizing this Colloquia webinar and also bringing in eminent resource person from India as well as abroad. I extend my thanks to our Dean. I thank Mr. Arunapal for having accepted and delivered an insightful talk on the social enterprise, explaining how we can make change and we can make social developments through social enterprises. Thank you very much, sir, for Amiri's busy schedule. You have accepted and delivered a wonderful talk. I thank I thank our principal MBA, Dr. Srikanth, principal architecture, George, Dean architecture, Suryak, for providing enough guidance to conduct this program. I thank all the faculty members, parents, students, alumni, and industrial professionals, delegates for actively participating in this program. I thank the technical support system team for providing technical support for this program. Once again, I thank you all. Thank you very much. With this, we come to the conclusion of this webinar. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Sure.
That was good. Thank you very much.
Speaks pretty good.